Tell ye and bring them near. Yea, let them take counsel together. Who has declared this from ancient time? Who has told it from that time? Have not I the Lord? And there is no God else beside me, a just God and a Savior. There is none beside me. Isaiah 45, verse 21. Welcome back to another No God Else podcast. Jose Mario. We are at it again. Decided to get me some hot cocoa and sit back and talk to you guys about something very serious, and I think something that a lot of people try to ignore and try to not talk too much about because we're either all wrapped up in it, guilty of it, or have a past of it. And that is the subject of lust. Now, lust is something that we all can relate to pretty much. And if you think about lust, you can kind of formulate the word desire into it. And if you formulate desire and lust, they're kind of like twin sisters. And if you look at it like that, then you understand that the first sin was lust, desire, things that were pleasing to the eye, things of want, things of things of passion. All of that seems to have seems to permeate our existence, whether you're female or male, whether you're Adam or Eve, in some form or another. Whether it was Adam's desire not to be alone, whether it was Adam's the way he looked at Eve, the way he was approved of Eve, how she looked, how she mimicked him, but in a different kind of way, type of thing. And even after the fall, his desire for Eve from that point out, permeated his existence to the point, he knew his wife then, and all these things, all the way back to Eve's desire to look upon the tree, her desire for the things that the tree could make her, wise or whatever, or have knowledge of good and evil, to be like God, the desire to be like God, all of that desire and lust seems to have their way with humanity. And it's a tricky little thing because it's also, of all the sins that we associate with humanity, we fail to remember that the body itself is not the source of sin. A lot of people think that if it's because of this flesh that I live in that I'm so messed up, or that sin is inside of my flesh and blah blah blah. Yes, I understand all of that. That may have been that way before Christ died, because all men shared that sin. But once again, we have to remember that Christ died to eradicate the law of sin and death, not just for the believers, but for the entire world. So we're no longer under that same, curse. We're not under that. That curse has been done away with. Adam's fall from grace and Eve's fall from grace that made us sinners, upon our birth, that has been done away. That has been paid off. Now, whatever you do yourself today, tomorrow, what you've done in the past, all of that is on you. It's not on Adam. It's not on Eve. So now we're responsible for our own sins. And when we stand in front of a just God, we will have to answer to what we have done. We won't be able to point back to say that we didn't have a choice, because we do. The problem with things like desire and lust is that, again, it's not associated, contrary to people's thoughts, it's not associated with your flesh. And you say, how do I know that? Yes, it's there in your flesh, but that's not the only way it can be born. That's not the only way it can be found. That's not the only way it can exist. That's what I'm saying. And the way you know that is because the angels fell from grace and they first desired women. You see, and they were perfect, and yet they still desired women. They still lusted after women without a body, without being born into Adam's sin. They still lusted. They still found desire of women. You see? So you can't say that the desire of sin the desire and lust is only found in your body, and that if you didn't have a body, you wouldn't have to worry about lusting or desiring or sinning or anything like that. All of that is false. For the simple fact that, again, Eve chose to follow Satan. Eve had a desire to be like God, the same sin that Satan fell to, long before she ever ate the fruit. See? So, what do we do with lust? What do we do with desire? Satan, unfortunately, has the game plan, the master switch, the checkmate principle upon desire and lust. He has it down, and he has mastered it for eons, and it has dominated humanity. Even our society today, now we don't have any molecule of remembrance about being abstinence, being absent, or practicing abstinence rather. Now, the parents go around just saying, hey, their kids are going to do it anyway, so we just got to teach them how to be safe. Let's teach them how to have sex instead of teaching them not to have sex. So even our generations have lost, to the point where our parents no longer preach abstinence and preach being a virgin. They preach about how to have sex, how to put it in, how not to get pregnant, how, what feels good, what doesn't feel good, how you should do these things, and blah, blah, blah. It's a different age, people. So, if you find yourself falling to sin and lust, which we all do, it is probably the number one sin in the world, probably, is lust and desire. And part of that evidence is the fact that the number one industry in the world, the number one industry that makes the most money, is the sex industry. Everything you see on TV, everything you see on social media is about desire and lust. Wanting to be like somebody else, wanting to look like somebody else, wanting to be with somebody else. These are the stories that we're told and we're thrown in front of all day, every day. If it's not in a book, if it's not on a TV show, if it's not on social media, if it's not in the movies, it's found somewhere else. It's found in your face when you walk down the street. It's found in your face when you go, to a store or something. I mean, everything from, the mannequin itself to the clothes, how they fit, the ads in the magazines. They're all there to show you that you should desire to have these things. And lust and desire doesn't only sit with sex or a person. Desire can come from desiring things, not necessarily people. Desiring somebody's lifestyle is still lust. Is still a desire. They're still playing on those same trends and those same flaws in creation, pretty much. And that God put it there? No, I don't believe that at all. I believe this is a spiritual force that affects both angels and man. And I believe that spiritual force is somehow still connected to possibly even the tree of knowledge of good and evil, of which I don't believe will exist after Christ comes back and establishes and destroys the world and remakes it, and brings heaven or the kingdom of heaven down to earth and dwells among men as the Bible tells us. The new Zion or New Jerusalem will be on earth. So I don't think, that the tree of life, the tree of good and, no, sorry, the tree of knowledge of the good and evil will exist after that. But that's just me. Now, I say all that to say that our commonality of trying to find a way to defeat lust should be, I think, should be our number one topic in churches. Because above all other things, you're going to face that more than you face any other sin in your church, any other sin in the world. And I think we do ourselves a disservice by not discussing this, not attacking this the way God wants us to attack it, to show how to overcome it, to show how to live a victorious life over lust and desire. That is what we need to teach. And so one of the first things I think has to happen, if you ever get to the point where you feel that you've had enough, or that you know that your lust is taking you to levels that you should not be, you're not happy with your life, of what you've done, whether you're unmarried or whether your desires are going overboard, even within your marriage. These things exist. We think that desire and lust we don't have to worry about once we get married because we have that one person we can have sex with, and that is a lie. Desire and lust exist even within the marriage. Can exist within the marriage as far as a problem and a sin. But I'll get to that. But the first thing you have to go through, or the first thing that has to be accomplished before you can even get to a conversation part where you can say, I'm ready to fight against this sin, this disease called lust. Okay? When you get to that point, it has to be because you hate evil, or you hate the sin. Because as long as you desire it, as long as you like what you do, and you won't ever quit, you will never be successful in defeating it. As long as you love and like and want to do what you do, whether that's lusting after a woman that you're not married to, or a man that you're not married to, whether you're even inside your marriage, if you're doing that toward another person, if you're doing that watching porn in or out of marriage, if you're doing that toward an item in and out of marriage, it's something that you're going to have to deal with. It first has to get to a point where you're like, you know what? I'm tired of desiring, coveting their life. I'm tired of, looking at porn. I'm tired of looking at Instagram or TikTok, where they're showing boobs or butts and stomachs and abs and guys and girls and whatever. Once you get to the point where you are fed up with it and you hate it, because you now understand that it's just as evil as any other sin. Once you come to that reality, and it's no longer something that you want to play around in, mess around with, stir around and stick your feet in here and there, you have to get to that point where you hate it, or you hate the very thought of it, you hate the very nature of it, and you hate it within yourselves and others. Not hate the person, you hate the sin within yourself, and you hate that sin within others. If you can get to that, that's the first step to overcoming it and mastering the sin called lust, or quote unquote desire. Second thing that you have to face is that you're going to have failure points. And those failure points, you have to watch out for it on your journey. Once you got to that point, you're like, you know what, I'm closing a book on this. Now I'm going to start making my steps to eradicate it from my life and to assure myself that I will be victorious next time my body desires something that my spirit does not want. Okay. You're going to have failure points. You're designed, you have to understand first off that you are physically designed to desire from the very beginning. Adam desired his wife. There is a good desire. But the problem is that desire and lust, there is also, you can lust after your wife or your husband, but that desire, that same desire that you're lusting after your husband, or that you desire for your wife, or that you desire your wife or desire your husband, blah blah blah. The desire and lust they have no identity or connection strictly to a person or a thing. It just is. So within us, we're designed, our bodies are naturally designed to desire and to lust because it's a function that God placed in us to procreate. So our brains, when you quote unquote get horny or hot or whatever the term that you want to use, it's really not that. This is a term we created to make it something sexy or appealing to people, when its reality is all it is your body is wanting to duplicate its cells. It wants to procreate, it wants to pass on its DNA, genetics code to another source so that it can continue to move forward. It's life. The cell wants to reproduce. The cells within your body want to reproduce so it can continue its life, so it can continue its purpose that God created it for. And that is to what? To multiply and fill the earth. You see? So that in itself, the multiply and fill the earth, comes with the desire. Next, if here's the tricky part that Satan has entered into it. Everything that God meant for good, he can turn to evil, like I said. So your body is going to create the same reactions, whether the person in front of you is your wife or whether the person in front of you is your next door neighbor. All it cares about is passing it on. Your body does not know the person you are married to. Your cells do not know the person you are married to. Your mind knows that, but your body doesn't. Your body responds to like its natural progression, its natural its natural tendencies to push for life, to maintain life, to be safe, to be strong, to be, to survive. All of these things are what fuels your body to do what it does. Your mind is where the warfare takes place for Satan. Yes. But your body is still not going to say, well, I'm not going to get hot or horny or what we call wet or hard or whatever. Your body is not going to say, hey, I'm not going to do this because I didn't marry her yet. Your body does not care what ring is on that person's finger or not. All it cares about, it wants to pass on the DNA. It wants to do these things. So it's going to create the same environments inside your body itself, whether that's getting wet, hot, hard, whatever you want to call it, for whatever, gender you're associating yourself with. From that point, you're going to feel the same things. It's not going to matter whether they line up with God or not. That's the biggest misconception. That's what the movies teach you. Oh, I want to make love. It's because I love you so much that I'm so horny. Nope. That's not the reason why you want to sleep with your wife, because you're in love with her. Love has nothing to do with horniness or passing on your DNA. You want to do that because she's the woman you love. But the passing on the DNA, that has nothing. That is a requirement of love. It's not needed for that. And that's what they don't like teaching you or telling you. That's the reality, is that you feeling like you want to have sex is not something that's it's going to be locked out to somebody that you're not married to. It's not going to happen that way, because it's all it cares about is passing on the DNA. It doesn't matter how. It just wants to do that, which is why the concept of homosexuality is not backed by, oh, I this is what I feel, so obviously it's right. No. What you feel is your body wanting to pass on DNA to another source. It doesn't matter what the source is or who it is. It just wants to pass on the DNA and hope that the source that it's passing on the DNA to will be fertile ground for it to reproduce. Problem is, that's not fertile ground. Doesn't matter how many times you do it, you're not going to have a baby. You're not going to get pregnant. A man is not going to have a baby, and two women are not going to, you know, make themselves pregnant by having sex with each other. No matter what they do, it's not going to happen. Are their bodies responding like they would, like they want to get pregnant? Yes, because that's what the purpose of being hot, horny, or whatever. That's just your brain trying to shut down reasoning for you so that you will be more inapt to go ahead and go through with the process of passing on the DNA, which will increase the likelihood of, life continuing. And that is what God demanded, for life to continue. But again, that's why it's unnatural for a man to lay with another man, woman to lay with another woman, because nothing natural comes of it. There's no life. Natural means something that creates life, something that extends life. That is not going to happen. Okay? So that's why homosexuality is unnatural. Because no matter how many times you do it, you'll never create life. And that is the point. You can pass on your DNA to that body all you want, and your DNA will die. And that counters the purpose of nature, is to create life, not to get off. The getting off part, that's to encourage you to continue to do it. Because we all know that there's hardships around the corner sometimes with pregnancy that are not ideal sometimes. Most of the time, they're not ideal. And then we know there's complications with, giving birth and afterbirth. And what comes after that is raising a child or children, and the financial drain and emotional drain, and the possible postpartum, issues that go around with different women that they go through, emotional instability, and all these other things that come about. So yes, if it was left up to our logical minds, the human race would have died off a long time ago, because because we would have looked at creating a baby as too much of a hassle. But because it feels so good, because there's desire, because there's lust, we end up doing things that we typically are not logically thinking about, but going after it out of instinct, out of the need to move through it. And that part of the brain that thinks logically, especially in men, is actually shut down to a great degree when it comes down to procreation. And it's there once again so that the man does not think logically about the act that he's doing and goes through with it, instead of, thinking logically through it, and he may not actually go through with it, and he walks away, therefore stopping the chance of life continuing. Now, all of that, again, that's what's happening in the body. In the spiritual world, in God's world, in the physical world, what's supposed to happen is that's supposed to happen within the confines of a husband and wife marriage. But we've corrupted it to say that this desire, because I have this desire to have sex, that means I'm in love. That means it's natural. That means it's good. That means I should do it. No, it just means your body looking for a way to get pregnant or to make someone pregnant. And the fact that you want to get pregnant or make somebody pregnant means that your natural instinct, your body is literally telling you to look for the opposite sex. It's not telling you to look for the same sex. It's literally telling you to look for the opposite sex. Now, what your mind corrupts that into is on you. But your body, the reason why your body is going through that is because it wants to produce, it wants to fertilize an egg, or it wants to be fertilized with the eggs that's in you as a woman. That's why it's producing what it's producing in your body. That's why your body is reacting that way. Your mind can tell your body whatever it wants, but the body still is going to desire what it desires, and that is to pass on DNA. And it can't do that same sex. So what happens is lust and desire now is corrupted because we've corrupted the idea of it. And that is one of Satan's biggest tricks now, because now if you're married and you're still having problems with lust and desire for someone that you're not supposed to be married to, or looking at porn, looking at TikTok, looking at Instagrams and all this other stuff that creates all kinds of images, YouTube, all kinds of things you can just look after, desire, even if it's desiring somebody's life, whatever it is, coveting somebody's life. Desire and lust now comes connected with that. So you have no way of separating the desire you have for your wife, or the lust you should have for your wife, versus the lust you have for porn, or versus the lust you should have for your husband, versus the lust you should have for porn. Women watch porn too. Men are not the only people that watch porn. Women watch porn. Some women look at porn, watch porn, or they read their acceptable porn, which is Lady Chatterley books and stuff, and what is it, the 60 Shades of Grey, and all these other novels that you find in stores, romantic novels, what they call it. They dress it up and say romantic novels or romance novels all day long, when it's all it is reading porn. That's all you're doing. But it makes you feel good to say that, hey, I'm just reading a romance novel. You guys are the ones that are sick because you're looking at porn. Well, I'm sorry, it's the same thing. You're still imagining somebody having sex, and you're getting hot and horny about it, and you're coveting their life, and you want your life to mimic what you're reading in the book. And all of this is playing off in your head, just like it would be playing off your head if you were watching porn. So the trick is, Satan knows that you can't turn off this side without turning off that side. So you can struggle all your life and say, hey, you know what? I'm done with lust. I'm done with desire. I'm not going to watch any more porn. I'm not going to watch anything that makes me hot or horny. I'm just going to stay to myself, and I'm going to tell my body to shut off all of this desire and all this other stuff. Okay, go for it. And what Satan knows is that, oh, you got a husband and you got a wife. So if you shut that part down, now how are you going to be there for them? Oh, you're not. Because that's going to slow down the romantic nature in the bedroom. Because when you shut off the light for lust and desire, you have no way of dividing it. You can't say, I want lust shut off only for my wife. That's not how your body works. And that's why God doesn't ever take lust from us altogether. He won't do that. You're going to have to manage that. And you're going to have to find a way inside your mind, inside your spirit, to balance it out. But you'll never be able to get rid of it. Not unless you have some kind of physical, accident or birth defect or something. You gotten so old to the point where it's, you don't even know what the word sex means anymore. Yes, I understand that. I'm not talking about that. I'm talking about people who literally have the ability to have sex, still in their right mind, still desirable to someone. You don't have to be desired to everybody, but somebody wants you. Of course, those people are going to be more susceptible to dealing with this than a person that doesn't have, the capabilities of, understanding what love is, understanding what sex is, or no one wants them no one in their whole entire life, has ever desired them or anything like that. Yeah, it's easier for them to shut that off and to do that. But I'm talking about the people, other people, the people that deal with this on a daily basis, that has somebody that they're desired by, and either love somebody or married to someone. All of these things are going to come into conflict with your life, because one one light for desire still burns for what it's supposed to be there for, while it still burns also for the things that are not supposed to be for. You can't just remove the entire light. You can't shut off the entire light and expect for the other part that should have been utilized for that, to be taken care of, because it won't. It's going to damage that relationship. And when that damages that relationship, the marriage relationship, then Satan wins again, because now your partner is going to suffer, and your partner now has a choice to make. Now, do I go the rest of my life without being fulfilled, or do I find other means? And that's where we get into this. The other means part is when they start to go out and buy toys, go out and look at porn, go out and have extramarital affairs, and come up with concepts like, oh, I should have an open marriage. That makes sense. Open marriages last longer. All these lies that Satan tells you. All these lies. And what all it does is there, and he loves it. He knows exactly what that's going to lead to. He knows that if, okay, your wife can't get it, husband can't get it, then that's going to open the door when they are horny, when they are, in their desire mode, and they know that you're not going to be there for them, that you're not going to do that for them, that they're not going to even attempt to go to you for it anymore, because you've shut that part off, or you're no longer, making the effort anymore. Then all of a sudden now they had to find substitutes. The most honest women, or the most loyal women, still find the toys, and they'll still read the romance novels and get off that way, and get the toys going and get off that way, or watch porn and get off that way. And then when that happens, Satan thinks, oh, well, you think, well, now at least I didn't commit adultery with somebody else. I can do this at least, and that's fine. Well, that's what happens, is when that opens the door later on, once your brain reaches its, balance out stage, where it's no longer as effective as it used to be, it's going to reach out for more. You're going to need more different types of porn, different types of romance novels. And when those run out, then those things are going to lead to people being desired at your job, romances at your job, your husband, your office husband, or your office wife. We've heard those terms. All these things have the domino effect to it. Everything has a cost. Everything came from one seed and grew into another. And even when we think in the process, before we see the tree and we just see the little sprout, we think that's nothing. That's nothing. That's nothing compared to somebody else's tree. But you don't realize is that every day you're watering it, it keeps growing. And before you know it, it's actually a tree. It's actually a problem. And now it's a bigger problem than it should have been, that you shouldn't, and now you can't juggle it. Now you can't manage it. And now there's problems that are stacked up because of that. Now, even if you do try to manage it after they've, managed to, let's say for your husband or your wife has managed to deal with your lack of lust for them or lack of passion for them, and they are fine with just using toys here and there, or they're fine with, watching porn or reading their smut, romance novels and getting off that way or whatever. Sooner or later, you're going to either, and here's the boomerang effect of what Satan does. He uses you to do that to your spouse. Your spouse jumps to the substitution stages. And once the substitution stages start, then you who caused the substitution stages to kick in harder with your spouse will start to see that substitutions are being done. And when that happens, then he goes to the jealous part. Now, all of a sudden, the spouse over here that wasn't a desiring husband or wife now is seeing the husband and wife being pleasured by something other than him or someone other than him. And now there's a big dispute about why. Now there's a big dispute. How dare you? Now there's a big dispute. Why are you doing that? That's sick. That's gross. That's whatever. And now, then the comfort zone that your spouse created to deal with the fact that you guys are no longer what you used to be because of the lust that you tried to balance out and you destroyed it altogether, infecting the relationship that you had with your wife. Satan knows all of this. All of this is a catch-22 for him. Now, because of this, we have two people that are at odds with each other, that have stopped connecting, stopped desiring each other. And all of this was because you tried to control something that was meant to be there. And that's something you have to understand, because when you don't, these things follow that. So that's the big issue right there that most Christians deal with, right? Is that when they do try to manage it, something like that happens. Okay. The next thing that comes about with that dynamic shifts is sometimes in that marriage, the substitutions that not the substitutions, but once they agree to stop doing the substitution and they try to return back and say, we're going to reestablish this, what happens is this is a force move. So now the person that has gotten out of the emotion of desiring someone, or desiring the husband or wife, or both parties have gotten out used to that. Now they're trying to force themselves back into something that they are no longer comfortable with because they've shut it off for so long. Either they shut it off with each other, or they've shut it off within themselves. Okay? So you have to understand that when you try to redirect this, you're going to come about a heel of trying to recapture something that had been lost, right? And that takes time, and that takes a lot of people's ability to set aside their pride, because you're going to have to be vulnerable for a while, because you're going to have conversations about who you are today versus who you were yesterday. And a lot of times that's something that Satan plays on, not opening up, not communicating, not addressing the elephant in the room or whatever. Because there are going to be times where you can grow apart, even sexually or mentally or spiritually. And all of that has to be dealt with in order for you to get back on the same page with each other. Then the next thing that comes about is that we have to, just because one party wants to grow, wants to get better, it has to be mutual. It has to be the same amount of direction and grit and, fortitude placed on both parties. It cannot be one leading the charge while the other still says, you know what, I'm still going to do what I want to do behind the scenes. I'm just not going to tell them. I'm not going to tell her. I'm not going to tell him, whatever. That can't happen. See, with this, you have to have total commitment, that both parties have to agree on a participation and a faithful, consistent effort to stay, stand through the tide, basically. So when you're used to husband or wife, when they're used to, for last 3 years of our marriage, I've just been using my toys. I've just been reading my books. Or husband, wife, whoever, I've been looking at porn or whatever, but I've been faithful. That habit, whether they know it or not, has been ingrained in them. And so when the husband goes away, or when the wife goes away, or when there's an excuse, the wife's on her period, husband doesn't feel good, wife doesn't feel good, the easiest thing for one or both parties to do is to fall back into their isolated events, their alone events, their substitution events, or their mind to shut off completely event. That's the worst thing that can happen. But you have to agree that you're going to stand on principle. You have to agree to be faithful and consistent, that when the time gets tough, when it's easy for you to go ahead and jump in the bathtub or jump in the shower and get off really quick while the husband is out, or while the wife is away, you want to look at porn, or you substitute porn with Instagram or YouTube videos or whatever, that's still does, creating this lust and this desire for other women, other content, other substitutions for your desire. You have to have the fortitude to continue on having the direction for all of your needs to be that partner. You cannot have a substitution. If you as the wife are hot and ready to have sex with your husband, or ready to have sex, your desire has to be for your husband. And that has to be your source. You cannot continue to make toys, books, porn, or any other source material, memories, or anything like that. You can't substitute your husband for your next door neighbor or your ex-boyfriend, or you can't substitute your wife for your ex-girlfriend, your next door neighbor. You have to make all of your desire be for that of your wife or your husband. You cannot substitute out. Because the moment you do, every moment that you do that, every step that you do that, every time you do that, you are creating more and more road that leads to Satan more than it leads to God control in your marriage. And that's what you're fighting. You're fighting for the control of your marriage. You're fighting for the spiritual balancement of whether or not your marriage lasts, whether or not your relationship stands, whether or not your promise to God is fulfilled. All of these things are tied into that. But it's tied into you being faithful and to not substitute the things that should not be. Now, I'm not here to tell another person that they shouldn't substitute if they're not married. If they are not married and you're doing something with something else, a toy or your hand or whatever, that's your personal choice. I'm not standing on anything that's going to say, oh, well, if you did that, that's sin, because the Bible doesn't stand on it. Therefore, I'm not going to stand on it, and I'm not going to create a unnecessary burden on someone that's trying to remain a virgin, trying to remain, abstinent, until they get married. If that is what they did or do to remain a virgin until they can give themselves to their husband or wife and not commit, adultery or fornication with another human being, if that's what they do, then that's what they do. I'm not justifying if they do that with lust with another person, like if you're watching porn or you got memories of some kind of book that you were reading, or you're focusing on imagination of sex with something else or someone else rather, then no, that is sin, because you're lusting after something else, someone else. You're committing adultery in your heart, you're fornicating in your heart, in your mind, your spirit, whatever. That still counts. But if you're just doing this just so you can relax, so you can get that out of, get that feeling out of the way, so you can remain, faithful and honest and a virgin and holding yourself accountable until you get married. If that's what you're doing there, I have no quarrels about it. I'm not going to stand in front of you and say that God says that that's wrong. Only thing that God says is wrong is that if you're lusting on top of that about another human being, that's different. But the act of your substituting or self-fulfillment is not mentioned in the scripture at all. So I'm not going to stand on anything or anyone claiming otherwise, because it's nowhere in the Bible. I'll eat the page you show it, because it doesn't exist. So therefore, man, I get that a lot of churches may frown upon that, masturbation or whatever. But there is no biblical evidence that supports that God ever said that that was wrong. So again, we have to be careful that we don't say, oh, well, if you, because you did this with, you can do this with lust, you can do this with porn, you can do this while thinking about somebody else. Just because you can do this with it doesn't make the act wrong any more than sex is automatically now wrong because you can have sex while thinking about somebody else that you're not supposed to be having sex with. Does that make sex with your wife wrong? No, it doesn't. It just means that your whatever you added shouldn't be there. The act that you're doing with your wife is fine, but the mind is where the battle takes place. The mind is where the sin takes place. And that is what you have to guard against. So, but I digress. Back to the marriage, people. Okay. So again, the three things, um, the three-headed monster basically are always going to be in your life. People, porn, and toys for marriage. People, in other words, people outside your marriage. Porn, porn including, your romance novels, whether you're reading porn, whether you're looking at porn, whether you're looking at semi-porn, whether it's on YouTube, whether it's on Instagram, whether it's a girl walking down, walking down the street, whatever. That's all included. Pictures of them walking down the street, videos of them walking down the street. It's still a person, but it's not a live person, so that's why I include that in porn. I get that. But toys, substitutions, using the toy to substitute in place of your husband when you know your husband wants to have sex with you, but you go ahead and get off with your toys instead of him, and then you come out, and say, hey, I'm fine. I don't want to really have sex. Oh, my head is hurting, or I'm tired. Of course you're tired. But these are the things that are enemies to your marriage. And you have to guard against them. You have to guard against the substitutions. So again, every time something is put in place of your partner, it will shift the connection away from the stability of your marriage sooner or later. And it will give the right or the access or the open door to Satan to influencing your marriage and the validity of your marriage and the direction of your marriage more than God as you do this over and over again. Every time you substitute something that you should have strictly with your partner if you're married. Now, is there instances where husband and wife want to share, a video because one is overseas and the other one is in a different place of the world, and they're doing a video conference and they want to get kinky and they want to do a video with each other, and that's fine. I'm not talking about that. That's not what I'm talking about. What I'm talking about is when I'm saying the word substitute, I'm saying in place of, despite of. That's what I mean by substitution. When you're doing something and you're taking something or you're using something in place of something despite that person's want, will, or knowledge, that's when you're substituting it. Okay? If your husband's fine, hey, I like it when you do these things, go and do them. That's on you. That's fine. That's an agreement you have. That's fine. But what I'm talking about is when a wife or a husband substitutes those things in place of the wife that he has or the husband that she has, when she could very well go get the same thing from him if she puts work into it, even if she has to work a little harder. It's not as easy, it's not as convenient, still he's there. Same thing with the wife. She's there, even if it's not as, easy or comfortable or whatever it is, she's still there. And that's where the work has to begin. That's where the relationship has to grow and stand on. So anyway, I hope that this conversation, as serious as it was, I think, and there's a reason why I didn't have any music on this one, I think it was something that I needed to address out there, because I see so many people that talk about their marriage, and I see so many marriages that fall apart, and they seem to always have the same root cause, and that is, the desire and lust area versus communication and consideration to me. Considering a person, having consideration about a person, another person's feelings, um, talking through those things and considering those things, that's a part of communication still. But I'll break it down a little bit further and say consideration. But really, I think that still falls under the term of communicating effectively with each other. And that means when you're communicating effectively, that means I'm listening to you and you're listening to me. And when I listen to you, I'm considering everything that you're saying, and I'm going to put into action the things that you are telling me, just like I expect you to be listening to me and considering the things that I'm saying to you so that you can put into action the things that I'm telling you. That is what, to me, holds together a marriage. That and proper application of where the desire and lust in the marriage stands and how it should be utilized. Staying very cognitive of not allowing people, porn, or toys to be a substitution for anything that relates to your marriage and your spouse. That is the key. So, again, I hope this is helpful to somebody out there. And, again, I know I'm not going to be able to cover for every scenario out there. Hopefully, the things that I brought up cover a good many different scenarios out there. And you can kind of use some of the same principles that I've talked about here to apply to other avenues of, relationships and marriage or whatever. And hopefully that'll, make it something that you can, imply to yourself or to others or to help others that you may come across that, are dealing with the same things that maybe you're not dealing with today, or maybe you've already overcome them, but maybe you can use some of these things to help somebody else or to encourage other people. So until the next time, guys, thanks for visiting. No God else.